Esau. He came from Israel. He was of the tribe of Benjamin. That's where Paul got his name. Remember, before we knew him as Paul, he was Saul, named after the first king of Israel, who was a Benjaminite. All right, that's your homework assignment. Learn to say that word better than I do. All right, so he goes on and looks at all those things that he inherited that ought to make him sufficient before God. But then he starts to list off the things that he earned. He's a Hebrew of Hebrews. He was the top of his class. If you looked up the word Hebrew in the dictionary, you'd find Paul's picture right next to it. He was a Pharisee. The leaders and the ones who were exemplary to everybody else concerning the zeal persecuting the church. He was so much a Jew, he set himself against Christ and persecuted anyone who would follow Christ. Concerning the law, concerning righteousness which is in the law, blameless. He said, I did everything I could do to keep every jot and tittle of the law. So if anybody had the right to say that they could earn their own salvation based on the flesh, it was Paul. He was as Jewish as a Jew could be. He was the bar setter. He crossed every T. He dotted every I. It's just like him saying, you tell those people who are trying to get you to follow all those Jewish customs that I am head and shoulders above them and being a Jew, and I've got the pedigree to prove it. But when I met Christ, this is what I discovered. All that other stuff, it's just religion. I found the righteousness that I longed for, but could never have earned on my own. See, that's what he says in verse 7. What things were gained to me, these I have counted loss for Christ. Now, let me paraphrase this, and I want to be careful, but at the same time, I think this is an accurate paraphrase. I was born in a Christian home. I went to church all my life, memorized the books of the Bible when I was young. I was a perennial winner of the sword drill. I served on the youth council. I sang in the choir. I ended up becoming deacon chairman, even taught the students in Sunday school. But I came to realize that all of that did not do one thing to make me righteous before God. It was like I was climbing the ladder of success only to find that it was leaning against the wrong building. You see, it's not your inheritance that saves you. It's not, you can't be born into the kingdom. You need to be reborn. Right? It is not your works that save you. You can't earn your way into the kingdom. You have to receive it. And that's what we need to be reminded of. That's what Paul discovered, that it was all of Christ and not of his works. So we move on to see the delight that he prized in verse 8. Yet indeed I count all things lost for the excellence of the knowledge of Christ Jesus my Lord, for whom I've suffered the loss of all things, and count them as rubbish, that I may gain Christ and be found in him. You know, our goals tell us what we want to achieve in life, right? We set goals, things we want to achieve in life, and then after that, we allow our goals to help us set the objectives of what we need to do to reach those goals. That makes sense? You set a goal, then you have an objective to reach that goal. But it's our priorities that tell us why we're setting those goals in the first place. And for Paul, everything about his life prioritized around Jesus. I mean, it would be like, and you've probably heard this before, Paul took everything from his life and he put it in a profit and loss column. And on the loss side, he would put all of his awards, all of his accomplishments, all of his accolades, all of his accumulations. But on the profit side, he put one thing, and that is knowing Jesus. And then he added it all up, and he concluded, knowing Jesus is enough for me. He counted everything else as loss. But he didn't just count it as loss. That word means to consider. He didn't just consider it loss. He indeed lost it. Look at what he says, for whom I have suffered